Hi, it's Bernie with you again, and welcome to Lesson 8 of the Murals and Movement workshop. So this week we're going to continue working with color, okay? So if you'll remember last week, we focused on the interpretive and the psychological aspects of color and how we perceive them through art and through movement, okay? And so this week then, we're going to focus on a little bit more of the science of color and color theory. We're going to focus on 3 aspects of color theory. Those are complementary color contrast, light-dark contrast, and simultaneous contrast. Okay, so if you want to read a little bit more about color theory, this is the book that I recommend. It's by a guy named Johannes Itten. So he talks about 7 color contrasts. We're just going to focus on 3 of those this week. Okay, and then once we kind of understand those more in depth, then I'm going to challenge you and invite you to do a really interesting project where you tell a little mini story using color theory to kind of guide the action and the narrative, okay? So, and then the movement part of this lesson is going to feature, once again, Allison, Simon, and Sarah from Attack Theater, and they're going to continue with their exploration of the chakras with color as well, and so how they flow together and how they all kind of fit within the body as well, and the different chakra points, okay? So they're going to take you through a movement exercise as well, and that's kind of a mashup, so that's going to be really interesting. So hopefully you enjoy that as well. So let's dig in. So here's the color wheel. I'm sure you've seen it before. These are the colors that are visible to the human eye, and if you'll notice, just the analogous colors that are near each other on the color wheel, and then the complementary colors, which are opposite on the color wheel. Okay, so we'll be working with those later. And as I mentioned, if you're interested in learning more about color theory, this is one of the good books to go to for that, written by Johannes Itten. So he's got 7 color contrasts, and again, we're going to focus more on 3 of those today in this lesson. So the first one I want to talk about is the contrast of light and dark colors. So again, it's just simply a matter of how much contrast you want, right? It's kind of an obvious thing. Just the more contrast, the more dark light contrast, the more drama, the more three-dimensional quality you'll have, and just either a more kind of somber image like the one on the left, or a more striking one like the one on the right. So you as the artist have to make decisions about what level of light and dark you want your colors to be, and how much contrast you want in your particular design to achieve the best effect. So this image obviously just has a lot of contrast. It really puts the focus on the woman in the center with that really, really light background. So the second contrast that I want to talk about today is complementary color contrast. So this is formed by the juxtaposition of 2 colors that are opposite on the color wheel. So that would be blue and orange, red and green, yellow and violet. So they create an area of tension or emphasis, mostly because they are trying to balance each other out, and so there's kind of a friction on the boundary line between them. As you can see in this image here, they tend to intensify each other a little bit, like the yellow, orange brings out the violet in those hills, and vice versa. So they sort of heighten each other a little bit. They intensify each other. And here's the blue-orange contrast. Again, this just creates a lot of energy. So if that hot air balloon were a different color, like let's say green, that's more analogous to blue, it wouldn't have nearly the amount of tension or energy that it has now, or contrast. So again, it's just up to you, up to what you want as the artist. So how is the designer of this Applejack box using light and dark contrast and complementary contrast to sell cereal to children and their adults? So how are they using color theory to grab your eyeballs and not let go, so to speak? So just take a look and see how they're making this fit with their target audience. What are they trying to create? What feeling are they trying to create? And the same question for these 2 cereal box designs. I love cereal box designs. They're really well designed oftentimes. And so again, orange and blue contrast, using diagonal lines, using a lot of directional line, like Tony pointing there. Again, it just creates a lot of high energy images that really grabs eyeballs. and it really is designed for kids in a lot of ways, and it just makes you want to buy the cereal, right? So the last one that we're going to talk about today, and probably the most complicated in some ways, is simultaneous contrast, which is formed by the eye wanting to see the complement of a color when it's not present. So it kind of creates a kind of a perceptual tension or vibration at the boundary line between those colors. So if you stare at one of those colored squares long enough, the gray square in the middle actually takes on the complementary color of the square. So in other words, the gray square inside of the yellow will tend to look purple eventually. So basically, simultaneous contrast just refers to the way in which two colors affect each other. So it's just important for us to get sensitive with how colors affect each other and how we're able to perceive that. This painting is a really good example of simultaneous contrast. If you can just see, like, the more muted areas are very much affected by the brighter colored areas. And so they all just kind of influence and touch each other in different ways, and it's important to kind of develop your ability to perceive that. As you can notice, like the purple in the sky being influenced by the yellow in the middle of the picture. So here's a great example of the power of yellow, just how it influences that silver car. Like the silver car almost looks a little bit purple, doesn't it? And again, it's in relation to the yellow. And again, so just imagine if it was a green color in the background, what effect would that have? How would that change the overall emotional feel of this design ad? And why did they use yellow? Okay, so here's the assignment for this week. Feel free to pause the video here if you'd like to read this a little bit more thoroughly. It's basically just choose one of the scenarios at the bottom there, and using visual language, all of what you know about visual language and color theory, to depict that story or that scenario in as powerful a way as possible. And like I say here, I'd recommend just using only flat two-dimensional shapes. You can use them, make them out of colored paper if you want to, or you can just draw them, but feel free to draw the images out more realistically as well if you want to. And so here are some additional questions to be thinking about before you start this project. So just what about those characters do you want to represent, and what evokes strong feelings in you about those different scenarios, and how can you accentuate those? What feeling do you want to evoke in this picture, and how do you do that using color theory? So I'm going to show you some examples from this great book called Picture This by Molly Bang. So she reconstructed or recreated the story of Red Riding Hood using flat colored shapes, as you can see here. So I'll just feel free to pause the video at any of these if you want to kind of get a longer look at this. So she's just trying to get a sense, a feel for the scene when Red Riding Hood finally sees the wolf in the woods, right? So how can she make that as dramatic and as scary and as intense as possible? So yeah, what else does the wolf need to look more wolfish? So she's kind of experimenting with the eye right now, like the color of the eye. And so she's thinking maybe it doesn't quite work as purple. So what color could she use to make it a little bit more intense or a little bit more scary? So she went with red, which is the same color as Red Riding Hood, and they're also the same level in the picture plane, like the same kind of horizontal arc that they're on as well. And so just note how small Red Riding Hood is here, and she's almost like kind of cowering behind a big tree. She's kind of like a little bit far away, and there's a little bit of tension there, as you can see, using the red. And so just note how much it changed whenever she changed the shape of the wolf's eye. I mean, does it look nearly as threatening now? It doesn't, does it? It looks a little bit like the wolf looks a little bit more tame now, which is really interesting. Just that a slight change from pointing more at Red Riding Hood to being like the same shape as her. So these small changes can make a big difference. So now she's kind of thinking about what other feature could she add to the wolf to make it a little bit more frightening. What would you do? How would you make the wolf look a little bit more frightening? So of course she adds the tongue, right? And so it just makes it look like it's a little bit more hungry now, right? And it's also another strong, bright red color. There's a lot of intense color contrast there. And so it just makes the wolf look a little bit more menacing, I think, with that tongue. So now, why does it feel more threatening now that she changed the background color to like a faint purple? So think about that in your own design for your own story. What color should the background be to get the right mood that you want in your design? And then lastly here, this is the contrast of light and dark colors at play here. Just changing the color of the teeth to add more contrast to them. Your eye kind of goes almost right to the teeth, doesn't it? Because of all that dark and light contrast. So again, just these subtle changes can make a big difference. Even the ear itself is pointing, and that's a little bit more threatening than if it were rounded. So have a good time with this, and hopefully you enjoy this project. Now, let's join Simon, Sarah, and Allison on the movement sequences, working with chakras again.
Red, root chakra, I am. Primal energy, survival, basic needs. Red, I am. Orange, I feel. Sacral chakra, pleasure, creativity, physicality, sensuality. Orange, I feel. Yellow, I do. Solar plexus chakra, willpower. I become. I do. Yellow, I do. Green, heart chakra, I love. Compassion, kindness, sharing, love, relationships, generosity. Green, heart, I love. Turquoise, throat chakra, I speak. Communication, voice, affirmations, compliments, honesty. Blue, turquoise chakra, throat chakra, I speak. Indigo chakra, third eye, I see. Intuition, psychic powers, I see. Indigo, third eye chakra, I see. Crown chakra, violet. I understand. Spiritual understanding, acceptance. Fullness, completion. Spiritual knowledge and wisdom, understanding of self. Crown chakra, violet. I understand. Breathe it all in and let it go.